Hey everybody, welcome to our garden
Oh,
party Q&A for all the Cultivate Your Content students. We've only got one here live with us today. And Heather, you're the newest too. You're the most recent addition to Cultivate Your Content. So thank you for joining us. We're just gonna chat a bit today. We didn't have very many questions submitted, so we're gonna kind of give you all a status update on our content, talk about some stuff, and then because Heather is live, she gets to have some two-on-one coaching time. So one of the benefits of showing up live to garden parties, you guys, they happen every 3 months. So if you show up live or if you ask questions ahead of time, you'll get more input and feedback from us. So
yes.
we're really excited about that. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Brogan.
Mm-hmm.
And you take it away and give us a little bit of an update. And this is what I'll encourage you to do. I will sometimes ask Brogan questions, and sometimes she will ask me questions. So sometimes we do a little bit of back and forth. So if you've got a question while either of us are sharing our status updates, Heather, please feel free to jot them in the throw them in the chat, and we can chat about it. And then if you guys are watching the replay, feel free to send us a DM on Instagram, either of us, and just ask a question, or ask the question in the Facebook group so that all the other students can see the answers. We're still a small and mighty group, so there's lots of room to get feedback. So anyway, without further ado, Brogan, take it away.
With that little intro, yes. So the past couple of months for content has been okay. Okay, guys. I think we had this discussion last time. So for Heather, this will be like a new update. But for everyone else, I think you know that I've been working on my new website for what seems like an eon. And then this whole little, thing of a global pandemic happened to throw a spanner in the works, just for some extra good stuff. And so that has kind of pushed out timelines. And I think that's just an important, kind of note to make as well, that we can have all of our plans and all of our goals and our end time frames and our deadlines, and then something completely outside of your control happens and you kind of just have to roll with the punches and do what you can. But for me, what kind of made this more difficult is because in redoing my website, I also have done a full content audit, and actually I am thinking of doing either making a mini training, maybe doing it as a Facebook Live. I haven't decided yet for doing it for you guys in the group, because I have had questions about what a content audit entails and how you do it and how you can make it fun and not drive yourself crazy doing it. So I will go into more details on that. But just kind of in a nutshell, it basically meant I went through over 200, I want to say, over 200 pieces of content that I've created over the past 4 years, going through all of it, deciding what to keep, deciding what to update, deciding what to get rid of, which alone took up a lot of time, and then the actual updating part of that. So that's kind of what I have been chugging away doing over the past 6 months, I want to say, because I'm a sucker for punishment, and I'm not just going to update my whole website. I'm also going to redo all of my content at the same time. And so what that has meant for me is that I've also been shifting into a different content model. So historically, I've always done consistent content in the sense of producing something new on a weekly or every other week basis. So that usually was on my blog, would be tied to my newsletter. And so I would be producing something new every week, every second week. I've decided to change that, and I'm shifting to what's called an evergreen content model. And so that has meant that I'm creating these giant, 6,000 word in-depth guides on my site. There's going to be 6 of them in total that I'm going to be creating over the course of this year. And that's kind of like a combination of a whole bunch of content that I've had in the past. And the idea behind them is to see kind of how that helps in terms of long-term SEO and organic reach and all of that kind of stuff. And plus I kind of got annoyed doing this content audit and realizing that there was 15 blog posts on basically the same topic. And I was like, why have 15 when you can just make it into one, big, huge, awesome one? So that's what I've been spending most of my time doing, is like collating everything and pulling it all together. And it has been really good to go back and look at some of my older stuff and just see, one, how much better I've got at writing and not at being on video, which is always really encouraging if you can go back to some of your older stuff and stuff that you thought was like really amazing at the time, and you reread it and you're just like, yeah, that needs to be updated. That's not so good anymore. So that's kind of always, I think that's encouraging in a way as well, because it's hard until you stop and pause and actually reflect on how far you've come. So that's always really encouraging to be able to like tangibly see the progress. Yeah, so that's what I've been working on, updating my website, which I'm in the process of like setting that live. So that should be live, I'm hoping, on Monday. That is my goal. Working on, I know, I'm so excited. Finally, after 6 months, I'm so excited. There's also going to be the first of the big in-depth guides that'll go live on that time as well. And then for other more regular content, like I'm still sending a newsletter every second week, but I'm having a lot more fun with it. I'm making it a bit more kind of like off the cuff, like I'm writing a letter. It's how I kind of used to do it, like way back at the start of my business. And I've been reading a lot of Jane Austen again, and I'm just really feeling the need to just write letters. So that's kind of what my newsletter is turning into at the moment. And it's been really well received. I'm getting, I'm getting a lot more responses to it. Open rates and everything have been kind of like getting higher again, which is awesome. So I think from like a results perspective, which, as you'll learn kind of going through Cultivate Your Content, is not the main thing that we talk about, but it is always nice to have those more tangible numbers attached to things as well. It's been interesting to see again, and just reiterating the point that the more fun that you have with something, the better that it does, out to everyone else as well. So that's been really awesome to kind of have that point reiterated as well. Yeah. So there's been a lot going on behind the scenes, which is also why I haven't been on Instagram that much, because I've been writing lots of words and editing lots of words. But yeah, it's been really fun. So yeah, if anyone has any questions about that whole process, about content audits or anything, drop them in the Facebook group, because yeah, I would like to do like a mini training or something on it for you guys. So yeah, let me know what questions you have.
I love it. I think content audit in and of itself is great. And one of the things that I think is really interesting to note, and that I would be curious about, would be like, what content, when you say 200 pieces of content, what was that? Was that just blog posts, or was that like what all other things? Because I think like if I was to do a full content audit, it would probably also need to include like all of the things, all the trainings, all the videos I've created, even if they weren't free.
Yeah.
Like even my paid content. Like that's what I feel like I would need to do, is go, okay, what is all the content I have? What are all the free webinar trainings I've done? What are all the things? Okay, now what is free? What is paid? How does this package up? And how could I take maybe a free webinar training I did and turn it into a really great blog post with like a little video, or you know what I mean? Like, anyway, so that's just one of the questions I have about a content audit that I'll just throw your way, is how would you include these pieces of past paid, or if you're transitioning your business, how do you look at all of those pieces? So Heather, do you have any questions about a content audit?
No, not about the audit. I was a little more, what was your evergreen content you were talking about? You were sort of amalgamating previous content that you've done into one big.
Yeah.
Sort of. Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea is that, so instead of publishing an 1,000-word blog post, for example, every week or every other week, I'm just doing, so the end goal by the end of this year, I will have 6 in-depth guides that will be available on my blog. I have also moved over some of my older blog posts that I felt were still relevant, that I felt were still useful. I updated some of them, but of the like 200, probably only, I think it was like 37 or something got moved across. So I did like a real hard like cut of stuff that just got moved across. Videos on my YouTube channel that I felt that I wanted more people to see, and that I could kind of group together in like a category. I have also changed how my blog is structured so that you can look by category, you can look by theme of things. So I did a visual poetry series. When was that? 2018, early 2019. So that series, you can see as is on my website. And then if I decide later on that I want to do another visual poetry video, I can, and then it'll just get added to the series. But I don't feel like I have to be like making one like every month or whatever I was doing before. And then, so the idea is that the main big chunky piece of content that's going to be on my blog now is going to be these in-depth guides. So like I said, they're anywhere from like 6,000 plus words. So they're pretty like in depth. They're all broken up into chapters. They've got jump links so that you can jump to different sections in them. And I'm also going to create an ebook version of them that's going to be like a paid upgrade, so that if you want an actual downloadable copy of it, you can take that away with you so that you don't always just have to come back to the site. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I'm going to be doing. So this year I'm going to be publishing like all 6 of those. And then the idea is that in, time ahead, I don't need to be publishing new stuff to my website all the time. I might just do something when I feel like there's a gap in the content that I have. And I feel like, it would be good to create something else there. But I'm not going to have to be on this like hamster wheel of creating stuff all of the time and then getting back to my original problem, which was having 15 blog posts on the same topic, which was unnecessary. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Good.
I was just wondering, it's how it sort of fitted together. But
yes,
I see how you're doing it now.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and like I said too, like I'm still sending a regular newsletter, but it's now kind of turning into something that's a lot shorter, which is nice. And then if whatever I'm writing about in a particular week, if I'm like, oh yeah, I have, this post that's published that also links to this, I can then just, link to it in the newsletter without having to like republish something new, because it's already there and I can just reuse it again.
Okay. Gosh.
Love it.
Yeah.
So good.
Also, this is also why it's taken like 6 months.
Oh yeah, because you're doing so much content. I mean, like I have 7 YouTube videos on my blog. Right? So like for me to do an audit of that content isn't going to take nearly as long. But one thing that I think might be interesting for everybody to know is, of this content that you're creating, what are you focusing people towards? Like I'm assuming all your different case studies are probably not going to have a different opt-in or lead magnet. So how are you taking the content and using that to help bring people into your community so then they get your newsletters?
Yeah. So I've changed how, I guess, because in a way, so my whole website is changed in structure. So it's actually a lot easier now to get onto my newsletter, because it's in the places where it's set is much more logical in terms of like user journey experience and all those like catchphrase words. So it's easier to find. And then the idea with the blog is, so I've changed how it is. So when you land on the blog now, it's not just like here's a whole bunch of posts. Keep scrolling for days. Here's a whole bunch of posts. I've added in an extra page like before that, which curates everything. And so that's kind of the word that I had in mind when I was recreating this stuff. I was like, I want to curate my best stuff and make that easier for people to find, and then give people who want to like dive into all the things, give them a link like at the bottom. They can go and look at all the things. But the guides are going to be like right at the top where it makes sense to mention my main opt-in, which is the content ripple. I mention it. I'm like, if you want more here, like you can go. So it's intrinsically, kind of placed within it. And then if you decide to upgrade with the guide to the ebook version, you then also get added to my email list, because that's how I deliver it, via email. And then for the other main posts, I think I have the Content Her Way planner as the opt-in. As the call to action, which also then leads to, getting people into the same.
And just to clarify for people, the Content Her Way planner is a paid product.
Yeah. So I think that's also too what I've been focusing a lot more on, because I feel like that's what I struggled with a lot with my old site, was just giving everything, giving everything for free, which, there's good and bad with that. But I felt like this time I really wanted to have a very clear path between the free linking into paid products, while still obviously promoting the free content ripple opt-in and all that kind of stuff, but just having the pathway a lot more clear and easier for people to follow. Yeah.
So good. So if
I'm
you guys
so
have more questions, if you're watching the replay, put them in Facebook, because this is a garden party Q&A, which means that this link will now live, we'll post the link to the replay in the Facebook group. So then you can just ask questions right there underneath that post. Okay, so that's great. Thank you for allowing me to ask those questions. I was like, I feel like these are questions that are going to be asked, so let's get you to explain them with words rather than having to type them all out later.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let me give you guys a bit of a status update. Every year around the Christmas holidays and around New Year, I take 2, 3, 4 weeks off, depending on what it was. And this year we kind of got, I'm trying to think of the word and now I can't think of it, but basically we got sideswiped over the holidays in our personal lives. And so this year did not at all turn out how I imagined. And so I ended up having a much longer pause with Modern Planner and with my business at the beginning of the year, as I was just trying to January was trying to I was reeling from everything. And then our son passed away on February 5th. And so that was very quick into the year, and I wasn't expecting that. So I basically didn't create any content for almost 2.5 months, because I'd taken a break in December and then did nothing in January, nothing in February, except for send one email out at the very end of the month to my community just to let them know, hey, this is why I'm not around. And so then, to add to all of this craziness of our life, I started a part-time job 1.5 weeks before everything shut down in Canada. So I'm grateful that I can work remotely, but I'm working remotely 20 hours a week with no childcare because of the pandemic. And so Modern Planner is very much fitting into the very small pieces and crevices of my life. So I guess this is a little bit less of a content status update and more of a life status update, but I need to give you that context, because essentially I have now we're into May, so I pretty consistently have sent out a bi-weekly newsletter to my community since March. Not because I feel like I had to. And this is, I think, what I want to reiterate is I'm not creating any of the stuff I'm creating right now because I feel like I have to, or I feel an obligation to my community, or I feel in order to run a business, you have to email your people this amount frequently. I have been trying to email bi-weekly because I truly care about my community. I have an amazing group of people who have joined my email list, who follow me on Instagram. And I've realized through this journey, I need them as much as they might need what I have to say. And so that's the biggest reason why I've continued to reach out. My content has looked very different. It's been much more life focused and much less planning focused. And I'm okay with that. And I straight up said in one of my emails like a month ago, I was like, just so you know, like there's going to be more of this. Like I'm now a mom who's walked through a lot more grieving. I've already talked about mental health. That's a big part of Modern Planner in my community because that's part of my journey. And I was like, well, grief is part of my journey now too. And so if mental health and grief and having those as part of the conversation about living intentionally and being guilt-free and all of these things isn't something you're up for, then feel free to unsubscribe, because like this is now a place where in addition to planning, these are things and conversations that we're going to have. So I'm still figuring my way around that and what that looks for me. And I'm under no illusions that I'm going to figure it out quickly. So it's going to take me some time to figure out that balance of what I share and how I share it. So a big thing for me is that I thrive in routine. And so obviously the last couple months have had this much of that. I mean, they've had a little bit in terms of like, we figured out a weekly cadence to our schedule. And like, I know when I have them and I know when I'm working, but like in terms of Modern Planner, there's been none. It's been like, okay, this thing's coming up with Brogan, fit all this stuff in. It's like, oh, I want it. Like I've been writing most of my newsletters on a Saturday during nap time that go out on a Sunday. Like that's just, you know, I'm literally scheduling my one Instagram post that's been going up a week the night before, because I can't do anything in live time with M. So it's like I schedule it the night before, like that. And I am totally and utterly okay with all of it. Sure, I don't prefer it and I would love to have routine and structure, but it's not stressing me out. 3 years ago, I would have been freaking out. I would have been stressed. I would have had this weight of, but I'm not following the rules of Instagram. I'm not posting enough. People aren't liking my stuff. There's not enough engagement. And at this point, it's like, it doesn't bother me. It's like, I'm doing what I can. I'm serving people well in the best way I know how, and I'm letting go of the rest of it. So that is the status update. In terms of content, my goal is to return to 2-week kind of content sprints. Not in terms of blog posts, because I haven't published a blog post for almost 3 years. So that's definitely not on the agenda. But for me, what a 2-week content sprint looks like is recording having one topic that I talk about kind of for 2 weeks, doing one IGTV, so recording a video of it, and then basically posting twice a week on Instagram, one being the IGTV, and then doing 3 other posts in that 2-week segment about that topic and having that conversation, doing some stories about it throughout that time, and then doing one newsletter in the middle of that's pointing to my IGTV and that talks a little bit or gives them another resource that they can look at. So I would like to get back to that 2-week content sprint. It works for me, and it still works for me in this season. It feels light enough that I can do it every 2 weeks. And it's not so much that it's like, I can't do that, because I'm really not publishing content in the sense of I'm not doing a blog post. It's not like a YouTube video that's highly produced. I literally sit down with my phone and record a 5-minute IGTV about a topic that I'm passionate about, that I have tons of content about. Like that's the thing, is now that my 5-year business anniversary is next month. And it's like, in those 5 years, I have not created a lot of blog content, but I have so much content from like trainings and programs that I tested. And then I was like, oh, that doesn't really work. So it's like, I've got all this stuff. So it's like, I'm not at a shortage for material, and I don't necessarily need to be recreating it and coming up with new. I've got things created that I can pull from that I've never put on Instagram before. Right. And so that's what I'm trying to do as I work through this process of these 2-week content sprints, is go, okay, what is stuff that I'm deeply passionate about that points into. So now another thing that I have is I reopened up my Facebook group back in March. It's only been like 2 months. But I just really felt like with my community, I needed a way to just be able to show up quickly and serve them. And so I reopened up my Facebook group that had been, that I'd started for the regret-free wrap-up that I hosted in November. So that had such an amazing community. So even though it has way less people than my Modern Planner group that I archived like 3 years ago, I was like, that's the one I chose to kind of revive. And so I opened it back up. So it's more ongoing. And so I still am figuring that out. And again, because I don't have a lot of time, there's not a lot of posts. I'm trying to do something every week. But the weeks are flying by really quickly. And so that's a little bit challenging. But I've done some Facebook posts. I've done some Facebook Live trainings in there, and the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. People are like, thank you for coming back and thank you for doing this. Like, I needed to hear your voice. I needed to hear your like calmness in all of this. And I'm like, yeah, well, talk to my husband because he doesn't hear calmness. Sometimes I'm like, ah! But anyway, so that is kind of what I'm hoping to get back to. And I'm looking to do that kind of in June to get back to that. And then I look at the calendar and I'm like, oh my gosh, June is like a week and a half away. Yeah, I don't think my 2-week sprints are going to be happening in June because I want to host my regret-free wrap-up again in June. Like, that's a really important thing for me. So I was like, well, you know what? Maybe I'll just promote my regret-free wrap-up and then after that, try to get back into a bit of a cadence. So who knows? I'm holding timelines and deadlines fairly loosely these days, which I think all of us need to be. In addition, I guess my biggest change that I've made with content on the like opt-in side is that I now have one main opt-in that I'm focusing on, and I've replaced my quarterly planning party, which was previously my best converting. I think it converted at like 27% or something like that. But it was a very high converting opt-in for me. And so people would sign up for my live quarterly planning parties, and then they would get they'd get an immediate replay. So it's like, if you sign up for this, you'll get the replay right away. And then they could do that. And then they would be able to join the next quarterly planning party. And so with this, all the transition and the stuff going on, I knew that I wanted to make the quarterly planning parties something that didn't involve me. Not that I don't want to do them, because I love hosting them, but I need it to be something that is a paid experience. Basically trying to take time with me, coaching people, you need to be paying for it. That's just a decision that I had to make. So that's why I'll still do IGTVs and I'll still do Facebook Lives, but it's not like video to video coaching. It's much more fluid. And so that's a decision that I just had to make this year. I said, you know what, if people want coaching to me, they're going to have to pay for it. And so that's why, again, like Brogan and I, we do our content planning party, but we've taken a little bit of stuff out of it so that it's really just the planning party, and the coaching comes in the quarterly garden party calls that we do with Cultivate Your Content. So I've done a similar thing. So what I did is I created my quarterly planning experience. So now people sign up. It's a 1 hour, really. Brogan, did you watch it? Have you seen the new one that got sent out?
I don't think I watched something, but no, I don't think I've done that one yet.
No, that's okay. So essentially what it is it's just, I walk you through the process, and when it's like, okay, here's your 4 minutes to do this, a 4-minute timer starts on the screen with the instructions of what to do. So it's a guided planning party. So it still is a planning party. It's just me. It's very professional. I really like it. So hopefully it attracts the people that I want to work with. But it's a way for people to do a plan with me guiding them, but on their own. And then that pulls them into their community. So at this point, that's the main thing that I'm going to use. And I'm going to probably get rid of everything else, at least for the time being. And so that's the main thing that I'm focusing on. And again, like Brogan, I also have these grand ambitions to work on updating my website, which has started with like a new homepage. For me, it's not like I'm going to do everything and then launch it. It's like one page at a time. As we get it done, it will go up. Because I have not had a homepage on my website for 3 years, since before Em was born. I had one, and then after she was born, I was like, this doesn't work anymore. So I took it off. And I haven't had one since. So now I finally have a homepage that talks a little bit about Modern Planner, directs people to the quarterly planning experience. And then I'll keep building that out as I go. So updating my website, potentially moving it to a different platform is also in the works for this year. But yeah, that is my status update. And just a quick note about when I look at my content and do these 2-week things, my journey with content, when I reset and I'm like, okay, I haven't really been doing content in a routine. What do I want to do? The questions that I ask myself are what has changed with my platforms. So for instance, now I have a Facebook group again. I haven't had a Facebook group for a couple of years. So what has changed with my platforms? What has changed with my content? So what's different about my content and what I'm pointing people to? So for instance, I only have one main opt-in and I really essentially don't have any blogs. That's like what's changed with my content, right? So getting some of those blogs back up and working is a high priority for me. And then also what has changed with my time. So those are the 3 main questions that I always ask myself when I sit down and pull out all my notes from like my one-on-one calls with Brogan and stuff to like look at, okay, what's worked for me in the past? What have I done? But I always start by asking myself those 3 questions because they lead and guide me moving forward. So that is my status update and ideas and thoughts and what I'm working through. And hopefully that is helpful. So again, if you watch the replay, let me know if you've got questions in the Facebook group. And Heather, do you have any questions?
I think I had a moment. Yeah, okay, so you ask your question, the platform, it's your Facebook group. Content?
Yeah. So what has changed with my platforms, my content,
Yeah.
and my time? Those are the 3.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Because I find that almost anything after that, once I've defined what my platforms are, what changes to my content I've been making, and how much time I have, it's really easy to make decisions based on what I'm going to create and how frequently I'm going to do it when I know those things. Like that's just just evens the playing field for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's good.
I was going to say, so now it's, go ahead, Brogan.
No, and you don't have to answer it here, but I would love to hear more about it. Although I don't know. I would, because I get questions about this all the time about like sharing, like how to know how much to share and sharing things that are personal. And especially in your instance, like sharing things that are hard and like, definitely in your case, like really hard things. So I would love to hear more about like, not necessarily if it's a conscious decision-making process, but just like how you, because I know you ask yourself like lots of awesome questions all the time. So I'm sure there's questions involved in this process somewhere. But just like how you kind of make that decision of like, okay, what is the right time to share something? How, far am I comfortable going? And that kind of thing.
Yeah. What the things that come to mind right away, and I can totally expand on this another time too, but the things that come up the most for me is I heard this one quote that talked about how you should, it serves like, let's start that over. I heard this phrase the one time that it was talking about why are you sharing something? Mm-hmm. And this is not about publicly in business, just about why are you sharing with someone? Are you sharing because you need their support and you need their help to heal a wound? And are they the right person for that? Or are you sharing because you're on a journey and you have some scars and you've got something that you've learned through that you can share with other people? And so I think for me, it's figuring out what place I'm in. Some things already, like mental health for sure, is very much scars and past. So I can talk about that and not affect me as much. Talking about Harper, I am very much still even figuring out how much I want to be part of Instagram communities or Facebook communities that talk about stillbirth and infant loss. And like, I'm still figuring all of that out myself. But the guiding principle for me is that I have built a community. Like, Modern Planner is very much built upon authenticity and me showing up as I am. And that has been one of the biggest things that people comment about all the time. Like, wow, you're just real. Like, you on every single coaching call, you're telling us about like how you didn't follow your own advice and how you're shifting that, or like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, so because that's how I built Modern Planner, I really felt like this needs to be part of it. Now, it has taken me way longer to write my newsletters in the last couple months than it used to. And a big part of that is because I'll write something and then be like, that should not be the focus. Like, for instance, my last email I sent on the 13th, not the 13th, whatever day Mother's Day was, like a week and a half ago, I had written a big post all about Mother's Day and like put some stuff in there, but it was also supposed to be a cultivate your content. Like, I wanted to share about the course and the program. And so like I wrote it and then I was like, I just don't feel right. Like, this shouldn't be the focus. And so I turned all of that writing that took me like an hour to write that and made it an Instagram post. And then at the bottom of my email said, hey, I want to acknowledge that today's Mother's Day. It can be a hard day. Here are some of my thoughts on it. Go to Instagram.
Yeah.
So, but that took me a long time to figure out. And so I would say that in this moment, I don't have too many guiding principles with what it is, other than show up as I am, share about the struggles that I'm having and what's working for me at the same time, because people don't want a negative Nelly. They're not going to stick around for that. And so just really trying to be authentic, be who I am, share my journey, but from a place of wanting to support other people and have the conversation and not like needing help. Like, when I'm really struggling, I don't tell my Modern Planner community. I text my good friends and I'm like, I need to talk to you. Like, I need to talk to somebody right now on the phone. Like, so I think just realizing like who sees the open wounds and who can we be authentic about our lives without like diving too deep. Like, I'm still keeping it fairly fairly high level with the Modern Planner community, even though I'm being real. But I think a lot of times, like, even just acknowledging like the pandemic is freaking hard. Like, this is not an easy thing, but a lot of people aren't even talking about it in their businesses. They're just going on business as usual. And to me, that doesn't elicit a whole lot of trust, because it's like, okay, but tell me how things are really going on. You know what I mean? Like, I want my community to know, like, yeah, I struggled even with sharing. Do I tell the Modern Planner community I have a part-time job? And that like Modern Planner is essentially a side hustle. And I even struggled with that. And I was like, well, Catherine, if you don't tell them, what are you going to do on coaching calls? And people are like, how do you balance your schedule? You always use real life examples. You need to be able to use real life examples. Like, you have to tell them this, you know? And I mean, what my part-time job is essentially doing with Modern Planner. Like, what I teach people for Modern Planner, I am doing for one company, 20 hours a week. You know what I mean? I am their project manager. I am facilitating, like, my job is program manager. Like, I do customer service, and yes, I do emails, but like, I project manage everything that we're doing. I'm like, the things that I do in Modern Planner are what I'm doing, but I'm actually doing them for a company. Whereas Modern Planner, I teach it. Right. And so it's like, it's not like it's a separate thing. It's just a way to bring some stability to my life. We were looking at our finances this year. It was a decision we needed to be made. Do I feel like I need to justify why I have a part-time job with anyone? Nope, absolutely not. But I think they should know that that's part of my new life, right? Yeah. So anyway, I don't know if that helps, and that felt a little rambly, but.
No, it was good. I think just it's interesting because I've been just, I guess to help me stay focused, I've also been like watching like YouTube videos and stuff like while I'm working, because weirdly that helps me focus. Just like, it's like I'm having a conversation with someone while I'm working. Like, it's great.
And I cannot do that, just to clarify. So if you can't do that, that is okay.
My brain works
watching
very
YouTube
weird
videos. Continue.
Like, I need to have it. Like, I've got this little side conversation happening while I'm working, which is great. But and it just kind of got me thinking about something, because a video I was watching, she was talking about how So she's been on YouTube for like 10 years. And so she was just sharing like the lessons that she's learned making videos for 10 years, like basically every single week for 10 years. And one of the things that she was talking about was to pick a version of yourself that you can show up as without like burning yourself out. So we all have different versions of ourselves. And I know, and I was like, that is such a good point, because I remember when I first started trying to do videos, I tried to be the like super energetic, like crazy version of myself. I can't do that all the time. Like, I'm an introvert. Like, that is exhausting. And even just making a video on that, like, such high level energy was like, I just spent 2 weeks at an in-person conference, and like, it was like the same energetically for me. And I would just crash after filming a video. And so I had to kind of decide that, okay, no, I need to like tone it down a little bit and just be like, if you rocked up to my house and we were having a chat, like, this is how it would go down. Like, this would be my energy level. And yeah, I'd get randomly excited at weird things for a moment and whatever, but mostly like my energy would be like down here rather than crazy up here. But I think that same principle kind of works for like, you know, deciding what to share as well. It's like looking at, you know, we don't have to be an open book and share all of the things about ourselves in order to be authentic or in order to be trustworthy. It's like, you can make that decision is on you to decide, okay, how much am I comfortable sharing with people? And that's going to differ for everyone. Like, even for me, like on social media, like I will mention my family in passing, but I have never ever said their names, shared their photos, or like tagged them in anything on my business account. Because, well, mostly my family would be like, why? Why are you dragging us into this? Like, what are you doing? Or we don't want to be on this. But although my brother probably wouldn't mind it, but the celebrity would go to his head. But like, it's just, that's how I like to keep it. Like, I will talk about my family, but in a more general sense. That's just the decision that I made right from the start, was that I wasn't going to be, you know, sharing photos of them and showing them, because that's just how I roll. Yeah. So I just kind of wanted to kind of help summarize by adding on some extra rambles. So I don't know if that helped, but hopefully.
Yeah, it's good. No, it's good. Heather, do you have any questions? Because I want to be aware of the time. But do you have any specific questions about your content, or like one piece of something that you could use some clarity or just some ideas? That's one of the things Brogan and I are really great at doing together, is brainstorming. So
if you can't tell, we bounce off each other.
Consider yourself with like 7 minutes of coaching time.
No, actually, you've both been very helpful anyway.
Oh, good.
Good. Well, as you have questions and as you work through the course, be sure to leave them and put them in the Facebook group.
Yeah, I will. And I think it's important to work out how much to share.
Yes.
Or what to share. And yeah, it would be my decision that my family, no, they wouldn't be comfortable. So that's fine. And I think it mental health wise and that, as you're saying, Catherine, how much of that to share. But a lot of, as a side thing, when you do share, there's people out there who are experiencing similar or something they can relate to.
Yeah.
And so it's would be a bit of a juggle to sort of get that even ground.
And that's, I think, what I struggle with the most, is figuring that out, because I know that like my journey, like 10 years ago, I would have loved if I'd found somebody talking about mental health and being intentional and like how to not put the pressure on. But like, that was not something that existed 10 years ago. Like simplifying your life and being intentional, they were not buzzwords, you know? And so I am trying to show up in a way with like my clear message of Modern Planner, but it is about guilt-free and intentional living. And a lot of times people with mental health feel guilt
Oh,
because they don't have the same capacity as other people. Or they feel like, oh, I have a bad day, or people with chronic illness, because I've lived where literally my entire body hurt all the time, every day. Even though I didn't have a chronic illness, mine was stress induced, if you can believe it.
no, I can.
Yeah. And so mine was not a chronic illness, but the symptoms showed up as they would for someone with a chronic illness, right? So even though mine was reversible and many people's aren't, I've lived with that. The fact that people know those things about me, the fact that moving forward, I can say like I've experienced immense grief, like not just losing a grandparent or, you know what I mean? Like, but yeah, like I've given birth to a stillborn son. Like, you know what I mean? I have a son who I don't get to parent here. Then when I talk about planning, I'm able to use examples like that, and people know like I'm not just blowing smoke. Like I'm not just trying to make up things. Like I've lived this. I've tried to figure out, like I can share schedule things about like when once we found the news and learned that he wouldn't survive after he was born. I learned, one of the things I learned with my schedule was not to look at my phone until after lunchtime. That was a very simple, but like when I'm talking about boundaries, for me to be able to use some of those things on coaching calls, like that supports people. It helps them know like, hey, like here's some different ideas, and like trying to give them different sides of it. So I'm definitely still in the trenches of figuring out like, how does that show up? Because even just saying some of these words can be really triggering for people. And I know that trigger is like an overused word right now. But on a lot of websites and conversations, like when people are going to post and share more details, they'll say trigger warning. And if you don't feel like you're in a place where you can handle it, then you don't read that post that day. And so I'm trying to figure out how to do that in Modern Planner, bring these things up, honoring people, trying to know that like, hey, I can support you. Like I've been through something similar, and offer ideas and support, but in a way that's vague enough that they know it's real without it being a really triggering experience, or without it bringing it all up for me. Because even the fact that I've been saying his name on this call and talking about that experience without breaking down into tears is like, you know, a big deal. And so just figuring that out, right? Like being, oh, okay, I can talk about this now. And not always. Sometimes it'll just hit me and boom, gone, which is fine. I have no issues crying in front of people. So if that happens publicly, it happens publicly, right? But yeah.
Yeah, I think too, that's an interesting point as well. It's like, I think how much we decide to share and what makes sense also links to like what your business purpose is and what your your core business messages are. Like in your instance, it makes so much sense to share that stuff because it is very intrinsically tied to, you know, Modern Planner core messages and core beliefs and the purpose of Modern Planner. And so I think that's something important to keep in mind as well, is just looking at, okay, like where does it make sense to draw those connections and to pull those pieces together? Because I know, like for me, there's definitely been things that I have experienced in the past, basically like a nervous breakdown and an eating disorder, but I have not shared that publicly. Firstly, because I haven't been comfortable to. I feel like now I'm probably at the stage where I feel like it's the first moment that I felt like, okay, yeah, I could share that publicly, but I still can't see a way that I can tie that in to being a useful lesson when I talk about content.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so it doesn't make sense for me to share those things just to be like, look at me being authentic and vulnerable, like out here on Instagram. Like that doesn't, it doesn't make sense in that instance. But like here and now, and using those experiences as an example of what I've decided not to share, it makes sense in this, you know, kind of like smaller, safer environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that's a distinction too.
I think a big part of it was people, and this is their prerogative, but there's so many people that are very open about their story, share a lot, attract a lot of those people, and then monetize something for that.
Mhm.
And so like, that's the part for me where it's just like, oh, do I
Yeah.
want to, you know, I'm not going to start a new hobby and like do things that are going to support. However, you know, I have 3 pieces of artwork that are in my store that were part of Set Vision Plan Change. And I can't even remember what the quotes are right now, but one is a life well planned is a life well lived. And there's 2 other ones that, progress is perfection. And there's the 3rd one. And anyway, and so one of the thoughts that I'd had is, you know what, like I would love, like those are a paid thing in my store. Not right now. They will be when we get it set up. But I would actually love to have a link all the time in my Instagram bio that is like, if you have suffered miscarriage, stillbirth, or infant loss, you get them for free and here's a code.
Yeah.
Just as a way to bless people. You know what I mean? Not something that then I'm going to turn into and like, not that I'm trying to give them like a code or give them a discount on one of my programs because of that, but just be like, hey, I've been there. I know how tough it is. If you know someone, just send them to this link. Here's the code. Like, I want to just give you these things. And then I was like, well, maybe it would be great to like add a 4th thing that says something, you know what I mean? So it's like people that are getting that are actually, I don't know, right? But it's like, these are the conversations I have of how can I give back to a community that now I'm a part of. And it's a club that you don't want to be part of and you don't wish anyone in your life ever joins it with you. But how, now that I am here, how can I support these people through my business, not just personally, right? And so trying to have those conversations. So there's a lot to think about. You know what I mean? And it's a lot, and it's not something that I'm going to like now try to monetize my story or my journey. And not that that's wrong, because people who have been through something, if like, you know, they learned how to, like, I love it. Like one of the women I follow, she learned how to hand letter, and it was like kind of a therapy for her. Like she learned how to hand letter so she could write her daughter's name and like make some artwork. Well, now she has an account. She does beautiful hand lettering stuff. She has hand lettered hundreds, probably getting close to 1,000 now, babies' names for free. But she also has a store where she has art where you can customize something with their name. And it's like, that's beautiful. Like it came out of, I need a hobby. I need something to do to help me with therapy and to grieve this process. And it turned into something that's a business. And so it's like, that is totally different than sometimes the big things that you can see where suddenly, oh, now it's, I mean, but they're all good, right? And they're all needed, you know, like, so anyway, I'm totally rambling again, but.
That's an appropriate monetization too. Like, you know, there's not sleazy, but there's poorly concept, and there's the other where,
And so I think it needs to be tied to like, where's your heart? What is your passion? Why are you doing this? And I think that because all of these things tie into Modern Planner, like I talk about schedule and boundaries and all these things, and like your boundaries change overnight. Your schedule changes overnight when you know what I mean? Like it's important to have that conversation. So anyway.
Yes. So
good. Any closing thoughts, Brogan, before we wrap up?
No, I know I usually have something, but like that was good. So I'm just going to let you have them.
This was such a great conversation. So Heather, we're so excited that you were able to make it live. We do this every quarter, so we'll make sure that you get a few weeks notice the next time we do it. We don't have our next date planned, but it will be sometime in like August-ish.
Okay.
Sometime around then. We don't know. We will pick a date and then let you know. But yay. Thank you so much. And to everyone watching the replay, we really hope that this conversation was helpful for you. And we'll see you in the Facebook group. Be sure to ask questions, and Brogan and I are cheering you on.
Bye, ladies.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.